It was originally a Ford, as all of Shelby's were.
There was right around 100 modifications that Shelby did to a Ford Mustang to make the GT350.
Deep beneath the windswept soil of Oak Island, a place haunted by legends for more than 2 centuries, Rick Lagina steps into a darkness no explorer has ever dared to enter. Moments earlier, his team had forced open a sealed stone chamber, one that had been hidden from humanity since long before the money pit was ever discovered. But as Rick's flashlight cuts through the dust-choked air, something immediately feels wrong. The walls are colder, the silence heavier, as if the chamber itself has been waiting. And then he sees it, carved deep into the ancient stone, letters so sharp they look freshly etched, is a warning no one was prepared for. Do not open. Rick freezes. Who carved this? How long has it been legendary oak? And what danger could possibly be so great that someone risked leaving a warning in a chamber that was never meant to be found? But it's too late. The chamber is already open, and whatever was sealed inside has finally been disturbed. As Rick Lagina takes one more step forward, he has no idea that this moment will trigger the most terrifying chain of events Oak Island has ever seen. Subscribe now, because what happens next changes everything. The morning air over Oak Island was unusually still, as if the entire island sensed what Rick Lagina and his team were about to uncover. After weeks of drilling, probing, and chasing a deep anomaly hidden far beneath the surface, the final layer of earth gave way, revealing a sealed stone structure unlike anything documented in the island's long haunted history. Rick stepped closer, brushing away centuries of soil to expose the surface of the chamber. The stone was impossibly smooth, carved with precision so advanced that even modern engineers struggled to explain it. It wasn't built for storage, it wasn't built for burial, it was built with intention, purpose, and secrecy. As the team activated ground-penetrating scanners, the screen lit up with data no one had seen before. The interior geometry violated known architectural patterns. Energy spikes flickered across the interface, strange, rhythmic pulses that didn't match any natural formation. Even the technicians stared in confusion, whispering that the structure behaved less like a chamber and more like a machine waiting to awaken. Rick felt a weight settle over him, excitement mixed with an unexplainable unease, the kind that crawls along the spine just before a discovery you're not sure you want to make. But curiosity drove him forward. Oak Island had kept its secrets for over 2 centuries, and now it was offering a door into a part of history no human had ever touched. As the final stone slab was carefully removed and the chamber opened for the first time, a cold burst of air hit Rick's face. Air that had been trapped, untouched, for possibly 1,000 years. His flashlight beam cut into the darkness, revealing walls that seemed to swallow the light instead of reflecting it. What Rick didn't know was that this chamber wasn't simply hidden. It was meant to stay hidden. And the moment his team broke the seal, they set something in motion, something the builders had gone to extraordinary lengths to prevent. As Rick stepped inside, scanning the walls for clues, he saw something etched into the stone, something that would freeze him in his tracks and raise questions no one on the island was ready to face. This chilling discovery leads directly into the heart-stopping moment when Rick encounters an ancient message carved deep within the chamber, a warning that changes everything. Rick Lagina's footsteps echoed softly inside the chamber, each step stirring dust that had not moved for centuries. His flashlight swept across the stone, revealing patterns, carvings, and grooves that hinted at a forgotten craftsmanship, one that didn't belong to any known era of Oak Island's history. But it was the far wall that pulled him closer, almost as if the darkness itself was inviting him forward. Then the beam landed on something that made him stop cold. Carved deep into the stone, so sharp it looked as though the tool had been lifted only moments ago, were 3 words that sent a chill through the entire chamber. "Do not open." Rick's breath tightened. This wasn't natural erosion. These weren't symbols worn by time. The message was deliberate, urgent, and carved with a level of force that suggested desperation. He ran his fingers across the grooves. The edges were clean, unweathered, as if whoever wrote it intended it to last forever. When the team above heard his voice crack through the radio, they rushed down. Cameras lit the walls, capturing every angle. Within hours, experts arrived. Historians, archaeologists, linguistic analysts, all trying to determine the origin of the warning. Their findings only deepened the mystery. Some experts insisted the style resembled medieval stone inscriptions, with angular strokes and ritualistic undertones. Others argued it was far older, possibly predating European settlement. One linguist suggested something even more alarming, that "do not open" might not be the original phrase at all, but the closest English translation of a warning, far more severe. A message meant for anyone who dared disturb this place. The chamber suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. Rick couldn't shake the feeling that whoever carved those words wasn't trying to frighten. They were trying to protect. But protect what? Or protect who? And more importantly, protect them from what? Just as the team began documenting the strange markings in detail, a new anomaly was spotted deeper inside the chamber. Something carefully placed, perfectly aligned, beneath the warning. An object that would change the entire direction of the investigation and reveal why this message had been carved with such urgency. The moment they saw it, every theory turned on its head. The warning on the wall lingered like a shadow in Rick Lagina's mind, but it was what lay beneath it that truly shifted the atmosphere inside the chamber. As the dust settled and the lights stabilized, something metallic caught the beam of Rick's flashlight. A faint glimmer, almost like a heartbeat pulsing through the darkness. The team moved closer, their footsteps slow and cautious. Nestled into a precisely carved recess in the stone floor, lay an object unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was smooth. Too smooth, as if shaped by a technology far beyond ancient tools. Its surface carried no rust, no decay, no sign of age, almost as though time had never touched it. Rick knelt beside it, his hand hovering just inches above the artifact. Even without touching it, he could feel a subtle vibration in the air, a gentle hum that seemed to move through the chamber's stone walls. The scanning equipment, which had been silent until now, suddenly erupted with activity, energy spikes flickering wildly across the screen. "Metallic composition unknown," one of the technicians murmured, staring at the readings. "It's not matching anything in the database." The artifact seemed to be made from a material that defied classification. It wasn't stone, it wasn't metal as we know it. It was something in between, dense, cold, and unnervingly perfect. As they lifted it slightly from its cradle, the hum intensified, and for a fleeting moment, the lights in the chamber dimmed, then flickered back to full brightness. That moment was enough. Rumors began to spread across the island, whispers that the object did not belong to any known civilization, that it might have been crafted by a group with knowledge far ahead of its time, or perhaps not from this timeline at all. Rick's instincts told him the placement of the artifact beneath the warning wasn't accidental. Whoever carved "Do not open" wasn't simply issuing a threat. They were trying to contain something, isolate it, hide it, where no one would ever touch it again. The deeper the team examined the artifact, the more the room seemed to shift around them, as though the chamber itself was reacting to its disturbance. A low resonance began to echo faintly through the stone, a sound that wasn't there before. Something was awakening. And as the team rushed their equipment outside for further analysis, they didn't realize that their actions had already drawn attention. Shadows moved near the tree line, figures monitoring every moment, waiting for the right time to intervene. Because what they had uncovered was never supposed to leave that chamber. And when outside forces suddenly arrive on Oak Island, demanding full control of the discovery, the mystery takes a far more dangerous turn. The artifact had barely been lifted from the chamber when Rick noticed something unsettling. The wind across Oak Island seemed to change, no longer carrying the usual salt and pine, but a heaviness he couldn't explain. Even the birds had gone silent, as if nature itself sensed that something forbidden had been disturbed. Before the team could complete their first round of tests, the distant thrum of helicopter blades cut through the sky. Rick looked up, shielding his eyes from the rotor wash as a sleek, unmarked aircraft descended toward the clearing. Dust spiraled across the dig site. The team exchanged anxious glances. This was not a scheduled visit. From the moment the helicopter touched down, the atmosphere shifted from curiosity to control. A group of officials, stern-faced, wearing badges Rick had never seen before, stepped out with military precision. They moved quickly, with purpose, their eyes scanning every piece of equipment, every person, every inch of the excavation site. Within minutes, they were issuing orders. The chamber was sealed. Access was restricted. Cameras, scanners, and artifact containers were confiscated and packed into heavy-duty crates. They shut down the generator, halted all communication, and demanded immediate silence from the crew. Not a word was to leave the island about what was found. Rick tried to question them. Why the sudden intervention? What authority were they operating under? But every attempt was shut down with the same cold response. This site is now classified. He noticed something even more disturbing. The officials weren't surprised by the existence of the chamber. They weren't shocked by the artifact. They weren't confused by the warning carved into the wall. They acted like they already knew. It was as if they had been waiting for this discovery, as if they had been watching Oak Island for a long time. Rick felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He knew the island was filled with secrets, but this was something different, something larger than treasure, legends, or lost civilizations. Whatever was inside that chamber, it was important enough for powerful people to descend without hesitation and bury the truth before it ever surfaced. As the final equipment crate was locked and loaded, Rick caught one official staring directly at him, an expression that carried a silent message. Stop digging. But Rick Lagina had never walked away from a mystery. And when the strange events begin to unfold across the island, events no official can explain, the government's presence becomes only one part of a far more frightening puzzle. Because something triggered by opening that chamber is now starting to reveal itself. The government may have taken control of the chamber, but they couldn't contain what came afterward. Rick Lagina sensed it first. The moment the artifact was removed from its ancient cradle, the air across Oak Island shifted. That familiar maritime breeze, usually warm and steady, grew unnaturally cold. Not a gentle drop, but a sudden plunge, as if the island had been pulled into the depths of winter. His breath turned white in the air. Goosebumps climbed his arms. Something invisible was moving beneath the surface. As night fell, the temperature continued to drop. Tools left on the ground developed a thin frost. The dirt itself felt cold to the touch. And yet, there was no weather system to explain it. No incoming front, no scientific reason at all. The anomaly was centered only around the dig site, spreading outward in a slow, deliberate circle. Then came the vibrations. At first, it was faint, just a soft pulse beneath Rick's boots, like the distant rumble of machinery underground. But Oak Island had no tunnels in that direction, no equipment running, no generators humming. Still, the vibrations persisted, rising and falling in a pattern that almost resembled a heartbeat. Every few minutes, the pulse would strengthen, sending loose pebbles trembling across the dirt. Metallic objects, tools, rods, even the ladder leaning against the spoil pile began to rattle as if responding to an unseen force. It was unnatural, unnerving, and impossible to ignore. By the following morning, the island's electrical systems began to fail. Lights flickered, generators choked, communication lines crackled with static. The crew's tablets shut down with their batteries inexplicably drained. Even the equipment seized by the government malfunctioned, forcing their agents into frustrated silence as they attempted to recalibrate machines that had never failed before. Rick watched it all unfold with a growing sense of dread. Every phenomenon, every cold gust, every vibration, every flickering light seemed to point toward the same conclusion. The artifact was influencing the island. It wasn't just a historical object. It wasn't simply ancient. Whatever it was active. The warnings carved into the chamber walls now took on a terrifying clarity. Do not open wasn't a threat. It was a crucial instruction. And Rick realized, perhaps too late, that breaking the seal had triggered a chain reaction far beyond their control. Yet the most startling revelation was still waiting. Because as the vibrations grew stronger and the island's systems continued to collapse, new symbols were discovered, hidden deeper in the shadows of the chamber. Symbols that hinted at a catastrophe far greater than the team had imagined, and their meaning would shake Rick to his core. The vibrations had grown so intense that even the stone walls of the chamber seemed to tremble. Dust rained from the ceiling in thin streams, and every flashlight beam wavered as if the air itself were unsteady. Rick Lagina knew something was wrong, terribly wrong, but even he was not prepared for what the team uncovered next. While examining the chamber one final time, Jack noticed a narrow fissure along the far wall, something so subtle it had been overlooked in the chaos. At first, it appeared to be a natural crack, but when Rick pressed his hand against the stone, the surface shifted with a muted click. A hidden panel slid open, revealing an adjoining passage no scan had detected before. Inside, the air was colder still, not the sharp chill of winter, but a dead, ancient cold that felt untouched by time. Rick's light swept across the darkness, revealing a chamber far smaller but infinitely more ominous. Its walls were covered in symbols, intricate spiraling patterns unlike any language known to historians. These weren't warnings. They were records. One symbol depicted a massive event, lines radiating outward, structures collapsing, waves rising, figures fleeing. Another showed the same artifact they had removed from the floor outside, surrounded by a barrier, glowing, restrained. A third symbol displayed something even more chilling, the seal breaking, followed by chaos. Rick stared at the sequence, his heartbeat echoing louder than the rumbling beneath the ground. It hit him all at once. The builders weren't trying to frighten future explorers. They were trying to stop them. Do not open wasn't a threat. It was a plea from a civilization that had faced something catastrophic, something powerful enough to wipe them out. The artifact wasn't treasure. It wasn't technology to be admired. It was the source of the disaster, sealed away with every ounce of desperation they had left. And now, because of curiosity, it had been disturbed. As the team attempted to photograph the symbols, the vibrations surged to their strongest yet. A deep, resonant hum flooded the entire chamber, shaking the walls and forcing equipment to rattle violently. Rick stumbled back, his eyes widening, as the ground beneath him pulsed with a rhythmic force, as if something buried deeper was beginning to wake. The realization struck him with terrifying clarity. Whatever catastrophe these ancient people had endured, its spark was now alive again. And as the chamber trembled, lights flickered, and the wind above ground began to howl with unnatural intensity, Rick understood one thing with absolute certainty. The island was no longer returning to silence. Something had been set in motion, something they might not be able to stop.